I've got a couple remote recording sessions coming up this week, and seeing as how I have not changed the heads out on my kit since I got off the road, it's starting to sound a little bit rough. So I figured this is a great opportunity to kind of walk you guys through my process of keeping my kit in good working order, keeping it sounding good, and also looking professional. So that's what we're gonna do today. Let's do this. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and lay out all of the drum heads, tools, and supplies that I plan on using for this tune-up. We're gonna be using all Remo heads today. On the snare drum, I'm gonna have a controlled sound X coated. On the rack tom, we're gonna have a 12-inch Emperor coated. On the first floor tom, we're gonna have a 16-inch Emperor coated. And for the second floor tom, we're gonna have an 18-inch Emperor coated. All right, for the tools, you want to have preferably 2 drum keys, probably some kind of pocket knife just in case, multi-tool, a set of different screwdrivers, flathead and Phillips head, and a set of Allen keys. You also want to have some kind of plastic metal cleaner that's safe for drums, along with some WD-40, some compressed air, and some petroleum jelly. Don't forget a bunch of towels. I use microfiber and just regular towels. Now that we've got all our stuff accounted for, we're gonna start by just taking off the old drum heads, starting with the snare drum. Once I've got the old drum head off, I'll take one of my normal towels and I'll wipe down the inside of the hoop. And I'm doing this to get all of those stick shavings and all of that dust that's accumulated over time out. And in that way, I get a nice smooth connection between the new drum head and the hoop. Then I take my compressed air canister and I spray the inside of it to get all of that dust out from the inside of the drum. Then I'll wipe down the bearing edge of the snare drum. And this is again to ensure that I have a nice connection between the new head and the drum. Lastly, before I put the new head on, I'll check each of these individual screws for the lugs to make sure that none of them are loose and are rattling. And if I find one that is loose, I'll grab my screwdriver and I'll tighten it up. Now it's time to put the new head on. However you want to position that logo is up to you. Then we can put the hoop on. Now, very important part, as I tighten down these tension rods, I want to make sure that I'm feeling for any resistance because I don't want to strip the lug or damage any of my hardware. So if I am feeling some resistance, I'll take that petroleum jelly and I'll dip the lug just a bit in the petroleum jelly, and then I'll continue screwing it in and just make sure that it's easing into that lug. I've damaged my hardware before, just tightening it down like that. You definitely don't want to do that. So I'll do that and I'll get everything finger tight. All right, the snare drum is now set and ready for tuning. So I'm gonna put this snare drum to the side and I'm gonna repeat that process now with the toms. The next thing I like to do is clean and polish the outside of the drums. And the way I like to do that is grab my trusty compressed air and I go ahead and dust off the outside of the drum. Then I take a microfiber towel and I take my metal and plastic polish and I spray just a touch onto the microfiber towel and I work that into the drum, all the way around, on the hoops, in between the lugs, and this does a great job of really making these things look amazing. The last thing we gotta do before we set the kit up and tune it is make sure that all the hardware is in good working order. So the first thing I like to do is just, again, dust it off with that compressed air. Then I'll make sure I'm not getting any squeaks from my pedals. And if I am, I'll hit them with a bit of WD-40. Then I'll grab my Allen keys, I'll grab my screwdriver, and I'll grab my drum keys, and I'll do a once over on all of my hardware stands. And what I want to do is just make sure all of the fittings, all of the screws, all of the memory locks are nice and tight and accounted for. And then I'll hit them all with a bit of that metal polish to make sure they're looking really good. All right, guys, we have one last thing we gotta do, and that's get these bad boys tuned up. So I'm gonna get off the ground, I'm gonna set this kit up, and we're gonna finish this thing out. All right, I don't wanna spend too much time on tuning. I think it's a topic that's been well covered on the internet, and I think I'd just be adding to the noise, but I did want to share with you guys just a few guiding principles that I use whenever I tune my drums. So we're gonna start with the snare drum, and the first thing I like to do is to get a consistent pitch all the way around the drum from lug to lug, and that's gonna allow the drum to resonate properly. So the way I do that is first get the tension rods finger tight, which we've already done. Then I put my fist into the head in the center and push down pretty hard. And you're gonna notice when you do that, that all of these wrinkles start to appear along the edge of the head. Then I just take my drum key and I tighten each lug until those wrinkles disappear. After that, I put even more pressure into the head and really push into it. And I've already done it on this drum, but you'll notice on a fresh head when you do that, it's gonna crack and pop, and that's actually what you want. That breaks the head in a little bit, and that makes it so it's flush against the bearing edge of the drum. So after I do that, I'll then hold the back resonant head, or I'll put it down on a throne so it's not making any sound, and I'll lightly tap from lug to lug and listen to the pitch on each lug. And I'll adjust each lug accordingly until I have a nice even pitch all around the drum. Next, I'm gonna do the exact same thing to the resonant head. Once I have the resonant head evenly pitched all the way around, I'm gonna make sure that it sits slightly higher in pitch than the batter head. And this actually gets into some personal preference territory, but I typically find that I like it when the resonant head is at least slightly higher than the batter head. It just gives the drum a nice amount of response and resonance for me. All right, the snare drum's now in tune with itself, so we're gonna move on and do the exact same thing to the toms, and then we're gonna come back and tune them up together and make sure they all sound good as a unit. So at this point, we have each drum in tune with itself, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all the drums are gonna work together as a unit. And this is the point at which tuning becomes more of an art form. And at this point, I just take a few minutes, I start playing the drums, and I start to gauge where the toms and the snare are gonna sit best based on the room I'm in, based on the gig I'm playing. I kind of figure out what kind of intervals I want between the toms, how high I want to pitch the snare, if I want to add dampening. And I realize that's not like a cut and dry answer, but tuning is not cut and dry. I'm gonna take a few minutes and figure this out, and we're gonna see what I come up with. All right guys, I've got the kit to where I think it's sounding pretty good. I added some moon gels to the snare drum and the toms, and I went ahead and mic'd the kit so I can now show you guys the final product. So let's take a listen. Alright guys, so that's my process of maintaining my gear, whether I'm off on the road or here in town. And I really hope you got something out of this video. I'll be sure to list all of the gear and the tools that I used in the description box below for you guys to check out. But that's gonna do it for me, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, make sure and give me a like down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. You take it easy. Bye-bye.